there, very good evening and thanks for joining us this Saturday evening here on Sabha TV. I'm Tracy Shrilji and you're watching the news tonight, and I'm going to be getting you the day's top stories from India and across the world. So let's start with the headlines. Tension in Kashmir a day after the death of Hizbul Mujahideen commander Burhan Wani. 9 protesters are killed and 126, including many police personnel, are injured in the clashes. After ordering a probe into controversial Islamic preacher Zakir Naik's speeches, government decides to crack the whip on telecasts by unauthorized channels, warns them of action if norms are violated. Prime Minister Narendra Modi retraces Mahatma Gandhi's historic train journey in Durban to leave for Tanzania on the third leg of the Africa tour tomorrow. Protests resume in the U.S. after the fatal shooting of 2 African Americans by policemen. Demonstrators block roads in several U.S. cities. And Serena Williams wins her 7th Wimbledon title to equal Steffi Graf's record of 22 Grand Slam titles, beats Germany's Angelique Kerber in straight sets. Top story this evening. Prime Minister Narendra Modi marked the historic train journey made by Mahatma Gandhi during the final day of his South African visit. The ride commemorated the incident in which a young Gandhi in 1893 was ejected from a South African train when he refused to move from a first-class carriage because of his race. The encounter shaped his decision to resist racial segregation and other injustices with non-violent protests, first while living in South Africa and then continuing it in India. The Prime Minister's ride saw him sitting in a wooden panel car with local officials, but was different from the one taken by the father of the nation. For one, of course, Saturday's train ride took place under heavy security. The Prime Minister also opened an exhibition on Mahatma Gandhi's life at the train station in Pietermaritzburg, the place where the Mahatma was thrown off the train. Of course, earlier on Friday, Modi made a strong pitch to South African businessmen to invest in India, and he also held bilateral talks with President Jacob Zuma.
On the second leg of his 4-nation Africa tour, Prime Minister Narendra Modi thanked South Africa for its support to India's NSG membership. Modi said India was fortunate to be able to count on old friends like South Africa.
I thank the President for South Africa's support to India's membership of the Nuclear Suppliers Group. We know that we count on the active support of our friends like South Africa.
Addressing a joint press conference with South African President Jacob Zuma, Modi hailed the centuries-old ties between the two countries. He said there was also a need to focus on improving industry-to-industry ties and human capital.
The nature of our developing economies demands that our engagement should also focus on improving our human capital. Our capacities and needs in the fields of vocational, technical and professional education complement each other and can benefit both our people. India is also ready to share its experiences and capacities for the development of small and medium businesses in South Africa.
The South African president also agreed to expand people-to-people contact between the two countries while announcing simplifying the visa regime with India.
We have agreed to expand and improve people-to-people contact through promoting tourism between the two countries. We would like to ensure the Indian side that South Africa is a wonderful tourism destination, and that a simplification of South Africa's visa regime with India is underway.
India and South Africa signed 4 MOUs on tourism, cooperation in culture and arts, grassroots innovation and information and communication technology. In addition, the leaders also agreed to work more closely on international issues and emerging global challenges. Modi also marketed India as an investment destination to South African businessmen in his address at the India-South Africa Business Meet in Pretoria.
India is a bright star in the global economy. We are being seen as the engine of global growth. India has become the fastest growing large economy in the world. At a time of global slowdown, we have registered 7.6% growth on GDP.
Later, he visited the Constitutional Hill, the site of South Africa's highest constitutional court, and paid floral tributes to Mahatma Gandhi. He also visited the Nelson Mandela Foundation in Johannesburg, where he interacted with the heroes of the South African anti-apartheid struggle. Modi ended his day with an address to the Indian diaspora in Johannesburg. Modi said India is working to achieve over 8% growth in the coming years and attributed the rise of the country to hope, harmony, optimism, potential and energy.
India today is also a land of opportunity for those who want to connect and collaborate, innovate and create, trade and invest, produce and engineer. India is today one of the brightest spots in the global economy.
Modi will be in Durban today, where he will visit Gandhi's Phoenix Ashram and meet leaders of the African National Congress. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And back home, 9 people were killed and at least 128 people were injured in clashes in Kashmir between security forces and violent mobs. In fact, the mob set 5 buildings and vehicles on fire to protest the killing of Hizbul Mujahideen commander Burhan Wani in an encounter on Friday. Appealing for calm, the State Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti expressed profound grief and agony over the death of the youths during the protests. She also asked security forces to avoid the use of disproportionate force for crowd control.
Violence erupted in Kashmir on Saturday, a day after security forces gunned down 3 militants, including Burhan Wani, a top commander of the banned Hizbul Mujahideen. Protesters fought pitched battles with security forces at several places in Kashmir Valley. At least 8 people died in separate incidents of violence.
जब तक शांति और व्यवस्था नहीं रहेगी, तब तक बहुत सारी समस्याएं जिनका की सामना जनता को करना पड़ता है, उनका समाधान संभव नहीं है. इसलिए मेरी सबसे विनम्र अपील है कि कश्मीर की जनता शांति और व्यवस्था कश्मीर में बनाए रखने में वो पूरी तरह से सहयोग करे बस.
In Srinagar, protesters pelted stones at security personnel, forcing them to retaliate. At least 120 people were injured, including many security personnel, as they fired tear gas shells to chase away demonstrators.
The focus is on making an appeal to the public that they stay calm so that no more lives are lost. That is our primary endeavor as of now.
Srinagar and adjoining areas observed a complete shutdown against the killing. All shops, major commercial establishments, schools and colleges were closed. Minister of State in the Prime Minister's office, Jitendra Singh, called for concerted efforts against militancy.
आतंकवाद के खिलाफ हमें सामूहिक लड़ाई लड़नी है. आतंकवाद को यदि हम प्रत्यक्ष या अप्रत्यक्ष रूप से उसका साथ देने का प्रयास करेंगे या कोई ऐसी कथन कहेंगे, कोई बात कहेंगे जिससे आतंकवाद को बढ़ावा मिले, तो कल वो हमें ही नुकसान पहुंचाएगा.
Authorities also suspended the Amarnath Yatra, fearing trouble. A senior security official said the pilgrims had been advised to stay put at the camps till further notice.
Yatra is suspended and all full protection to the yatris wherever they are right now, whether they are in the camps or reach a certain point. It will be extended 100%. So they will be given full protection and ensure that their safety is taken care of. The further decision on when the yatra will be commenced will be taken as the developments emerge.
The 48-day pilgrimage is slated to conclude on 18th of August. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The centre has decided to crack the whip on unauthorised channels and has warned them of drastic action if norms are violated. The measure comes in the wake of reports that speeches by controversial Islamic preacher Zakir Naik had allegedly inspired one of the terrorists in Dhaka. Meanwhile, the Shia Muslim community in Uttar Pradesh held protests against Zakir Naik.
Siege has not only turned the spotlight on Islamic preacher Zakir Naik, but also on TV channels. The centre says the broadcast of unlicensed channels will be checked and penalised. It has sent advisories to monitoring committees, asking them to be on lookout for media content that violates guidelines.
We are issuing an advisory to the district monitoring committees, also to the state monitoring committees, that they should keenly observe the cable operators, what they are broadcasting, and any content being broadcast in violation of these the guidelines, action will be taken against them to the extent that confiscation of their entire broadcasting equipment.
Meanwhile, the Shia community in Lucknow took to the streets demanding a ban on Naik speeches for allegedly propagating terrorism.
मैं हुकूमत हिंदुस्तान से मांग करता हूं कि पीस टीवी को बैन किया जाए और पूरी तरीके से पाबंदी लगना चाहिए पीस टीवी के ऊपर। जाकिर नाइक की संपत्ति की जांच होना चाहिए कि इसकी संपत्ति, इसका पैसा कहां से आ रहा है, इसकी फंडिंग कहां से हो रही है।
Naik's TV channel Peace TV broadcasts out of Dubai. It is banned in UK and Canada, but is aired by some cable TV operators in India. Reports said 9 teams from the NIA, IB and other agencies are keeping a tab on Naik's activities, while special team are scanning footage of his speeches. On Friday, Home Minister Rajnath Singh asserted that the government will not compromise on terrorism. On Thursday, Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis directed Mumbai Police Commissioner to investigate Naik and his organisation. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
At least 15 Muslim youths from Kerala's Kasaragod and Palakkad districts have gone missing in the Middle East. Family members suspect that they could have joined the terrorist group Islamic State. According to them, a few relatives received messages last week on WhatsApp from unknown numbers and destinations claiming that the missing people reached the place of the Islamic State. The missing youths had gone for higher religious studies to the Middle East and were below the age of 30 and highly qualified. Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan has now directed the state police to launch an investigation into the matter urgently. Recently, the Hyderabad police had conducted raids and arrested 11 suspects in the city on suspicion of being sympathizers of the terrorist group.
അതീവ ഗൗരവമായിട്ടാണ് കാണുന്നത്. അത് പരിശോധിക്കേണ്ട വിഷയമാണ്. പക്ഷേ ആ ഉന്നയിക്കപ്പെട്ട വിഷയം അതീവ ഗൗരവമായിട്ടാണ് കാണുന്നത്.
എത്തിയാണ് നല്ല നിലയ്ക്ക് പോലീസ് വെരിഫിക്കേഷൻ കഴിഞ്ഞ് നല്ല നിലയ്ക്ക് ഇവിടെ എത്തിയാണെങ്കിൽ ഞങ്ങൾ സ്വീകരിക്കാൻ തയ്യാറാണ്. അല്ലാതെ വേണ്ടാത്ത രാജ്യത്തെ വിട്ടുകൊടുക്കുന്ന ഒരു തീവ്രവാദ കേസുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെടുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് അവൻ്റെ മയ്യത്ത് പോലും ആവശ്യം ഇല്ല.
And now let's take you through what else making news across the country in Nationwide. BJP President Amit Shah is in Mao district of Uttar Pradesh, where he officially announced an alliance with the Suhail Dev Bharatiya Samaj Party ahead of the 2017 Assembly polls. Targeting the Samajwadi Party and the BSP, the BJP President said that development in UP is not possible under either of these parties. Four people were killed and 5 suffered injuries when an illegal shopping complex collapsed in Meerut. The building was being demolished during an anti-encroachment drive. Angry residents shouted slogans against the authorities for carrying out demolition in an unprofessional manner. 6 people are still feared to be caught under the debris. At least 5 villagers were killed and 3 others injured in crossfire during an encounter between security forces and Maoists in Kandhamal district of Odisha. The forces were allegedly sitting on ambush when they were engaged in an exchange of fire from a hillock on the other side of the road. The victims, who were on an auto rickshaw, were caught in the crossfire. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal today flagged off the Aam Aadmi Party's campaign for the 2017 Gujarat elections after arriving in the state for a day-long visit. Landing in Rajkot with his family and party leader Kumar Vishwas, Kejriwal first paid a visit to Somnath Temple. The visit is seen as an attempt to give a push to the party and carve out a space for a third front in the state, which has so far remained a two-party battlefield. The Supreme Court will hear the petition of Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi, who is seeking a stay on the Bombay High Court order refusing to quash the defamation case against him over his remarks on the RSS. The court had earlier adjourned the plea till the second week of May. Rahul had made remarks holding the RSS responsible for Mahatma Gandhi's assassination. A quick break here. We'll be back with the international sports news in a bit. Stay with us.
Welcome to this episode of Eureka. We are with us Professor Deepankar Banerjee.
After the Mars mission success, ISRO has been more and more confident and adventurous. Aditya is the first dedicated space mission from ISRO. Coronagraph essentially again allows you to study the atmosphere of the sample. Lagrangian 1 point, it's actually a position where you could look at the sun continuously.
Watch Eureka with Professor Deepankar Banerjee, astrophysicist from Indian Institute of Astrophysics, only on Rajya Sabha TV. Life after death was a cardinal belief in the Harappan civilization. Reflecting this is the skeleton of a middle-aged woman with gold bangles. Excavated from Rakhigadi in Haryana, it's an example of the burial practices in those times. Much like the Egyptian mummies, vessels, eatables, ornaments were kept near the dead body, in the hope that they would be of use to the person in the next world.
Welcome back. And now, in what could be another blow to Indian IT firms, US lawmakers on Saturday introduced a bill to prevent Indian companies from hiring H-1B employees. The H-1B and L-1 Visa Reform Act of 2016 was introduced by a bipartisan group of 2 US lawmakers in the House of Representatives. If passed by the Congress, the bill would prevent Indian companies from hiring H-1B employees if they employ more than 50 people and more than 50% of their employees are H-1B and L-1 visa holders. The bill needs to be passed by the Senate before it's signed into law by US President Barack Obama. Of course, the bill hasn't been tabled so far, but a similar version of this bill could not gain enough support in the Congress when it was introduced in 2010. North Korea test-fired a submarine-launched missile off its eastern coast today, but South Korean army said that the missile successfully ejected from the submarine's launch tube. It failed in its early stage of flight and exploded mid-air after a few kilometers. The US and Japan strongly condemned Pyongyang's latest offensive move.
Tensions are high in the Korean peninsula after Pyongyang test-fired a submarine-launched ballistic missile from the southeast coastal city of Sinpo. However, South Korean military called the test unsuccessful as it appeared to have failed in early stages soon after the launch. The latest move from Pyongyang is in direct violations of the United Nations Security Council resolutions which were imposed on North Korea after its earlier missile launches. Japan also strongly condemned the missile launch.
北朝鮮のこの国際社会に対する挑戦は安保理決議に対する明白な挑戦であり、我々は国際社会ともしっかりと連携を取りながら断固として北朝鮮を糾弾をしていかなければならないとこのように思っております。
The US too said that it was monitoring the situation in close coordination with its regional allies. In a statement, the US State Department called upon North Korea to refrain from actions that further raise tensions in the region and focus instead on taking concrete steps toward fulfilling its international commitments. Saturday's launch is Pyongyang's latest show of force and comes a day after Seoul and Washington's announcement to deploy a high-tech US air defense system to counter the North's threats. Also, earlier in the week, the US Treasury Department blacklisted North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and 22 other officials and state entities for human rights violations. This is the first time the United States has imposed direct sanctions on North Korean leadership and is seen as a warning that it will hold those responsible for abuses. The North has angrily protested the US decision, saying the move constitutes crossing a red line. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now to the US, where a day after a sniper killed 5 policemen at a demonstration in Dallas, thousands of protesters resumed their protests against police killings of 2 African-American men earlier this week. Protests were held in several US cities, including New York, Atlanta and Philadelphia. Meanwhile, explosive materials and arms have been recovered from the lone shooter Micah Johnson's house.
Thousands of protesters returned to the streets in several US cities a day after 5 policemen were killed by a sniper at a demonstration in Dallas. Resuming their protest against the police killing of 2 black men this week, protesters blocked roadways in New York City, Atlanta and Philadelphia. A large number of protesters also turned up in New Orleans and Louisiana. Police in Phoenix and Arizona had to use pepper spray to disperse protesters. Demonstrations also took place outside the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C.
Everyone has to show their support. It shouldn't be confined to one race. It's about equality and all races being equal, and that everyone shows up and shows their support, like I said.
Meanwhile, the FBI forensic team continued to collect evidence from the house of 25-year-old Micah Johnson in Dallas, who killed the 5 police officers on Thursday. Bomb-making material, rifles, ammunition and a combat journal were found at his house. Officials said Johnson, an army reservist who served in Afghanistan, acted alone.
Mr. Johnson, now deceased, was the lone shooter in this incident, and by piecing together what was happening at the time, after we talked to and interviewed all the officers, there was confusion with everybody running around, but this was a mobile shooter that had written manifestos on how to shoot and move, and he did that. He did his damage, but we did our damage to him as well. And we believe now that the city is safe and the suspect is dead, and we can move on to healing.
US President Barack Obama has cut short his Europe visit and will be traveling to Dallas next week. Obama called the assault a vicious, calculated and despicable attack on law enforcement. US presidential nominees Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton also condemned the attack and called for unity and national guidelines about the use of force by the police.
Now, I have set forth plans for over a year to reduce excessive violence, reform our sentencing laws, support police departments that are doing things right.
The deaths of Alton Sterling in Louisiana and Philando Castile in Minnesota also make clear how much more work we have to do to make every American feel that their safety is protected.
Buildings in downtown Dallas were lit up in blue lights to pay homage to the deceased police officers. The recent shooting threatens to plunge the already fraught discussion over race and policing in America to new depths of discord. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now for more updates from across the world, here's Global Buzz. The US expelled 2 Russian diplomats in response to an attack on an American diplomat in Moscow. The 2 officials were told to leave by the 17th of June. The action comes the 17th of July, The action comes a month after a Russian policeman attacked the US diplomat near a US embassy in Moscow. However, Russia says that the diplomat worked for the CIA and refused to show ID papers. The United Kingdom will send 50 additional troops to Afghanistan for training to counter terrorism and to provide leadership training. They will join the 450 British troops already in the country. The troops will not take part in any combat operations against Taliban and will assist Afghan forces to keep terrorists out of the country. Super typhoon Departak swept through China's Fujian province, causing widespread devastation across the coastal areas. No deaths were reported so far, but normal life was disrupted. According to the local Met Bureau, the typhoon will make landfall in Fujian province around Saturday noon and has issued a red alert of possible weather-related disasters. Meanwhile, the China PLA Navy conducted live fire drills between the Hainan Island and Shisha Island in the South China Sea on Friday to enhance the battle readiness and capabilities of the Navy under any circumstances. China used warships supporting vessels and warplanes from its South, East and North Sea fleet for the war game. All right, sports news and the big news coming in. Serena Williams has won her 7th Wimbledon title, beating Angelique Kerber of Germany in the finals. With this, she has now equaled Steffi Graf's record of winning 22 Grand Slam titles. The world number one, who was beaten in the final Australian Open and a French Open this year, overcame the world number 4 Kerber in straight sets 7-5, 6-3. Kerber had beaten Williams in the Australian Open final in January, but could not produce another shock this time. The German serve was kept under pressure by the top seed. After the score tied at 5-all, Kerber was finally broken in the first set. Serena, of course, became more fluent in the second set and powered through the set with another break to win her 7th Wimbledon title.
It's been incredibly difficult not to think about it. I had a couple of tries this year. I lost to 2 great opponents, one actually being Angelique. But you know, it makes the victory even sweeter to know how hard I worked for it. And thank you guys for being out here to see number 22. This is awesome. So I love you guys so much. Thank you very much.
And now let's get you more updates from the world of sports in Sports Beat. Indian shuttler Ajay Jairam defeated Anand Pawar 21-11, 21-11 to storm into the semi-finals of the US Open. The 28-year-old will now face Japan's Kanta Tsuneyama for a place in the final. However, India's campaign in the doubles event ended as both men's and women's doubles teams lost their respective matches. In the men's Wimbledon final, British top seed Andy Murray will be taking on Canadian Milos Raonic on Sunday. Murray dispatched Thomas Burditch in straight sets 6-3, 6-3, 6-3 to enter his 3rd Wimbledon final. In the other semi-final yesterday, Raonic edged a historic win over 7-time Wimbledon champion Roger Federer in a 5-set encounter. Reigning Olympic and world sprint champion Usain Bolt, who suffered a torn hamstring at the Jamaican Olympic trials, will be finally named in Jamaica's team for the Rio Olympics. Bolt had been uncertain for the Olympics after he withdrew from the Jamaican Championships last week. Reports, however, say that the Jamaican Olympic Association will list Bolt among 4 runners for the 100 and 200 meters race. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. Thanks so much for joining us.